All right. Uber, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yep, we're good now.
Can you see me?
I can see you too.
Oh my goodness. I have no idea what's going wrong with this show this morning. I apologize, everybody. Good morning. Thank you so much for tuning in. I think I might have played the intro like 3 times, but just for point of reference here, on my screen right now, not only is it flipped around, it was showing it works now. There has been like some serious StreamYard lag this morning. And I have no idea. I have never encountered this in my life. I have never seen like this actually happen. Literally, this has never been an issue I've run into. So I do apologize to everybody who is currently watching. That is not supposed to happen. Normally, you've been a part of the show. You'll see the cover one signature and us. So to avoid any further headache, I am bypassing all video clips until we try the StreamYard or the cover one promo later. Anyways, Uber Hansen, thank you so much for joining me today on today's episode of Under Review. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. Before the show, we were talking. Tomorrow's going to be an early morning, so get to talk about football here this afternoon and try to get to bed early, I guess, so I can get to the bar tomorrow.
Yes, the extended, or I should say like the earlier start times for bars as the Bills play an exciting game across the pond in London. Very excited for that matchup. Also, I really love these comments for the guys who are watching this whole thing go hard. If people weren't here for the start of this show, good. But if you were, Roy and RJ specifically, thank you guys for this amazing commentary. RJ Melville says, oh no. Yes. Oh no is right. And I had that exact same reaction as soon as I clicked the go live button. So I will explore all those issues later. But yeah, man, it's weird to see the Bills back in London. This is the first time that they have traveled to the, Tottenham in it's been about 7 years, 8 years, 2015, last time where Tyrod Taylor went down with an injury and we got to watch the incredible EJ Manuel first half where he threw, 3 interceptions in one quarter, if you recall?
Yeah, that was a rough game. Maybe we get a little bit of revenge this year. Let's hope so.
Yes, I am certainly hoping so as well. And there are a lot of interesting things to cover with the matchup of a team that, while may have not shown their strongest performance last week against Atlanta, and they still beat them significantly, is a matchup that I think, given the current circumstances surrounding the Bills, given the fact that the Bills are dealing with some injuries, the fact that, some issues with the rushing defense, despite how good the defense has been overall, and we'll talk about that more. It's a sneaky, difficult team. And I think coupling that, and I'm going to ask you about this, but really thinking about the fact that they have been in London for a week already, thinking about the fact that they have had this time to kind of rest, prepare, acclimate, while the Bills travel Wednesday night, get there, and they have less time. And even Josh Allen has admitted to being tired and kind of fatigued from the flight. Talk to me about your thoughts on kind of the travel that the Bills are facing and this disadvantage that it creates going up against the Jags.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a weird thing, right? This is the first time the NFL has ever attempted it. It's the first time we have a team playing back-to-back in London, so we kind of don't really have the data to say, oh, this is the advantage they have, this is the disadvantage. We do know that when teams fly from the West Coast to the East Coast, historically, they play worse, and this is a similar situation, just a much further distance to travel, right. Affecting time zones, etc. I will say, I do think that the Bills have the best doctors. They have the best, probably, sleep study experts on this. Like, they know what they're doing more so than, say, me when I flew to London and was like, I'll just try to stay up for 36 straight hours, essentially, which did not work, by the way. I think the Jaguars do have a slight advantage here. And I know that there's some ex-players saying, like, after a week in London, you just want to get home and see your family and do this. I get that, but I really don't think that has as much impact as the Bills traveling all the way there. So if I had to say who has an advantage because of all this weird travel, weird 2 weeks in London, I would give the advantage to the Jaguars over the Bills.
100%. And I like this comment from Roy, which says the Jacksonville Jaguars are the new London Monarchs. Yes, that is basically you want to call it like a residency, like how DJs have residencies in Vegas. The Jaguars have one in London. But what frustrates me is the home game is the Bills' home game, which I've never been a fan of that. Like, especially in the fact that with the 17-game season, key matchups that are going to happen later in the year, you're compromising one of your home games to go play in London against your will with no advantage whatsoever. In fact, they're a disadvantaged home team right now. So it's never been a thing I'm a fan of, and I completely agree with you. That advantage is definitely going to Jacksonville. They have been there longer. They are far more acclimated. Again, you mentioned the distance. Like going from east to west, west to east on a normal flight is about 5 hours. Private jet probably about 4 and change. I haven't traveled to the UK, but by all accounts, it's usually in the 6.5 to like 7 hour range, right, Uber? Like in that ballpark. So you also have to adjust for the fact that time is moving forward. So you leave at 8 p.m. and you're getting there with that time difference. You're getting way less rest, way less time to recover. And the team has now been there for 2 days. I mean, it's just not a lot of time to get acclimated. So I am curious about the strategy. If they wanted to just get some practices in the home territory, maybe some team, like members of the team were dealing with some injuries that maybe they didn't want to rush them on a flight that could cause swelling or some sort of ailment from altitude. I don't really know the reasoning, but it is what it is. We can't deny it. This is how the team's got to play this week. And there's no excuses still. It is annoying, but at the same time, they're a better team, a better roster, and they do need to win. And now let's go into the conversation of matchups. So let's first start with just some of the overall stats, and this is provided to us by FTN. Jaguars are the 15th overall in team DVOA. They are 17th in offensive DVOA, 11th in defensive DVOA, and 22nd in special teams DVOA, whereas the Buffalo Bills are currently first overall in DVOA, third in offensive, second in defensive, and an improvement from last week, 14th in special teams DVOA. So we do have, by all metrics, this team is the best team in the NFL right now, as they just showed you with DVOA. They are dealing with some key injuries on the defensive side of the ball that we will go talk about more in depth later. But I want to start on the offensive side of the ball and talk about a matchup that is very sneaky this week, and that is the Jaguars rushing defense versus the Bills rushing attack. And on our topic sheet, Uber, I have it as Bills rushing attack. Can they lean on it? So I will ask you, do you think the Bills are able to lean on their rushing attack this week against what's been a very good Jaguars rushing defense?
Yeah, so the Jags have 2 players, and full disclosure, before the show, I Googled videos to get how to say their names correctly. So I'm just going to throw them out there quick. You have Foye Oluokun, that's their linebacker, an absolute stud. He has over 400 tackles the past 2 years. That's over 400 tackles in a 2-year span is a wild number. That includes postseason, by the way. And then you have their defensive tackle. This is a little more difficult. Fola Runcho Fadukasi. That's their defensive tackle. He might not play tomorrow. If he doesn't play tomorrow, that's going to be a big concern for the Jaguars. So I got those names out of the way. Now going to your question here. I think the Bills can run the ball. I don't think they're going to run the ball super efficiently. Like I wouldn't expect this game to be a game where the Bills are getting 6 yards a pop. But if they can get 4-5 yards somewhere in between there throughout the game, they can keep doing that, force the Jaguars to adjust, and then let Josh open up the game with his arm.
Yeah, that would be a big loss. And I do agree that it's something they are a stubborn rushing defense that has been very successful. And the Bills have leaned a bit on their running game to kind of open things up on the second level with their passing game, because the absolute threat of it is something that really lends itself well to how the Bills can kind of scan, survey the field, and keep defenses on their toes, real fast. RJ with a comment here to say, it's crazy to say, but this game is a must win. You can't go down 2 losses in the conference by week 5 with all caps this schedule. I completely agree with that, RJ. You can't. You need to be as poised, as much as like in your zone, winning games, stacking these conference wins this early in the year while it's quote unquote easy. Nothing's easy in the NFL, but saying that you have to kind of get these wins together and keep them because you are going against a difficult stretch down the year, it matters. And especially when you're playing a back-to-back of Kansas City, you do have the bye, but then you have, Philadelphia bye Kansas City, and then going to more divisional games like Dolphins in December. You have late November Jets. You have the Patriots at the end of the year, which if they have nothing to play for, they would love to be a spoiler sport. These games matter. The only silver lining I see to this is the fact that 2 of those really tough games in the December stretch and in November, December are NFC games. So it's not that you want to lose them, but it's that if you are worried about conference seeding in what could be a very tough conference for the top teams, the NFC losses might not weigh as heavily. So I do take that into account, but I do agree that you still need to win this game. And I hate the fact that you have to travel and lose a home game to play it. That is the worst part. I know I've been complaining about that the whole episode. I apologize, but like, it's so annoying. I don't like the London game. I am full transparency. I loathe the fact that this is just kind of like a marketing tactic and I want I don't want to sound like gatekeeping. Like, I don't want it to sound like I'm not happy that there are fans in Europe that are gravitating to the NFL. That is awesome. And I understand that they deserve to watch football too. And it's harder for them. So bring games to them. I'm just mad that it's the Bills. It's kind of like a spoiled brat kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like, so full disclosure, like, it is totally a selfish thing of why I don't like it. But yes, I think it's going to be tough for the Bills to lean on it this week if they're fully healthy. If they do have that loss at D tackle, I think that could open things up. So I want to ask you, just kind of moving on in the regards of rushing attack, let's talk about the offensive line versus the Jaguars defensive line and how it could kind of match up with them in both the run game and in the passing attack.
Yeah, I mean, the Bills' offensive line has been playing really well so far this year. Actually, on my show on Monday, I kind of spoke about this. There's kind of two different ways to look at the Bills' offensive line and defensive line. I'll get to the defensive line later. But with the Bills' offensive line, they've been playing really good defensive lines this season. The Commanders have a really good defensive line. Granted, they didn't play that way against the Bears. The Raiders have Max Crosby. The rest of their line kind of sucks. And the Jets have a really, really good defensive line. The Bills' offensive line has played really well against essentially all of them. And now they go into this game playing a Jaguars team who probably is closer to the Raiders than they are to the Commanders in regards of talent on the defensive line. That's not saying they don't have talented pieces, but they're not as good as a team like the Commanders are. Not even as good as a team like the Dolphins are. Granted, the Dolphins were missing Jalen Phillips. So
Right.
I look at the Bills' offensive line this week, and I just see an offensive line that yet again can dominate in the trenches. And kind of going back to something I've written about and said kind of this entire year so far, it's really refreshing to see a Bills defensive line and offensive line that's consistently winning in the trenches. That's something we haven't seen in the Josh Allen era. And now that exists, it just makes this team incredibly more dangerous. So I expect them to kind of keep dominating up front this week.
Yeah, they have the number one pass blocking offense, and I believe it was the number 8th rushing. So their offensive line, I should add, has been stellar. It's exceeded expectations. I mean, when we went into the season and we saw kind of the preseason rankings where the Bills were 18th and the rest of the AFC East was right behind them, you were just hoping to kind of climb that ladder by maybe like 4 or 5 spots. Like, we knew Osiris Torrance was a rookie. We knew what we had. I don't want to say knew what we had, but the development curve and the banking of progress from Spencer Brown was a concern. Mitch Morse is good. Deion Dawkins is good. Connor McGovern, who we know to be a good pass pro and has been great in pulling this season, was still kind of a question mark just because you haven't seen him play a regular season game with the Bills. They have right now far and away exceeded expectations. And it's been such a pleasure to watch them because it's not like they haven't been tested, Uber. Like, they have played a really good defensive line against the Commanders, some really talented edge rushers in Max Crosby. And you're talking about the Jets offensive line, which it was a defensive line, which was a bit tougher, but still held their own at points. And then you talk about last week where they're playing Christian Wilkins and they're playing Emmanuel Ogbah and Bradley Chubb, who I know people have mixed reactions about Bradley Chubb now, even though he's gotten that contract, but there's talent there, and they have absolutely established themselves, at least right now, as a top-tier offensive line. So when you look at them against the Jaguars defense that, apart from Kentucky Josh Allen and apart from some of their linebackers, is kind of akin to that Raiders style line where they can hit home at times, but it's not a consistently dominant pass rush like what you've seen from the Bills, what you've seen from maybe what's another great team, like the Eagles, these types of teams that are so deep and defensive line depth that even with injury, they're able to overcome it. So from a pass rushing perspective, I'm not overly worried, especially because I do believe that 2021's game film exists. Sean McDermott witnessed what was probably the most horrific regular season Bills loss I can remember. And I think it's worse than week 1 Jets. It's worse than really anything I can remember, Tampa Bay, whatever, because that was just disgusting football. But this is a Bills team that, one, has been there before, seen that pass rush, has seen what Josh Allen does and how they could kind of try to mitigate it and make him the focal point of their game plan. But also talking about the fact that we do not have Cody Ford anymore, and we do not have Darrell Williams, and we do not have John Feliciano, but rather a really new sound structure offensive line that has given us no reason to believe that they're going to kind of falter. Now, it's not to say that they won't have their moments. I mean, every offensive line, especially with deep drops, are going to have issues, but I feel pretty confident in them in the pass rush standpoint. But rushing attack, I have to wait and see. I do like the idea that some people in the chat have kind of tossed around where it's like Damian Harris, Latavius Murray, maybe more of like if that D tackle's gone, you really try to hit home with 12P, power rushing, and like leave those outside zones for Cook. Do you foresee that happening, Uber? Like, what are your thoughts on just kind of how the Bills rushing attack could play tomorrow, like as far as stylistically?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're gonna test every single gap. Like I think you'll see some outside, and if it's outside, it's going to be Cook. And I think that's one kind of bad thing about the Bills' offense. Almost is essentially if James Cook is on the field, you know that the Bills might attempt to rush outside. If it's Damian Harris or Latavius Murray, they're running it right up the gut every time. So teams can kind of bank on that idea when they play Buffalo this week. I don't know. Latavius Murray ran really well last week, and he's just a thumper that I trust to get a minimum of 3 yards. And if you're getting a minimum of 3-4 yards on first down, second down, that's shortening the sticks. And that lets Josh Allen just play in a completely different world, because when it's let's say it's 3rd and 5 compared to 3rd and 10, then that team has to be so cautious of how they defend Josh Allen. Is he going to run for 6 yards and pick up the first down? Maybe. So you have to kind of account for that. So I think the Bills might lean on Latavius Murray more this week, but I still think you're going to see James Cook be the bell cow.
And you've seen examples of the Bills rushing offense lean on Murray when they needed him. We know Cook is a good runner. We know Cook has good vision. He's speedy, but when the backfield is kind of disrupted, I would rather have the powerful back to kind of try and fall forward for those extra yards. And it's not to say Cook can't, but it feels like, again, this is why you sign him and bring in that different level of your running back room, because you have this change of pace where these running backs offer you a different style, maybe view things differently. Maybe the whole point of their existence on this play is to just, again, 1st and 10, inside zone, or some sort of duo gap run, whatever it is. Try and just punch that hole out and try to get 3 or 4 yards, because that might be all you need in this example. Now, I am going to bring up the graphic that is on Twitter. We both realized before the show went live, and I think this is the reason that everything went to crap in the beginning of this episode, and that is because I am sharing my screen. Now, I have never seen this happen on StreamYard, but when you share your screen, normally it's like, oh, here you go, buddy. Here's the screen. It's like a presentation you make for work. Today, it took like 30 seconds to load. It nearly crashed my StreamYard, and I think it's the reason everything glitched in the beginning. So full disclosure that this is about to happen. I am going to share my screen. And for all you audio listeners, if there is like 2 minutes of silence, it's because my computer's set on fire and I have to go get a new one. So here we go. 3, 2, 1. Oh, look at that. Can you hear me? Is everyone good? Are we all good?
We're good.
All right.
We're good.
This is such a meme. I do apologize to everyone listening for how like non-professional this has been so far. This has been a wild, wacky event. But let us continue on the discussion. So, as you all know, I've had him on my show before, Mr. Aaron Schatz, a.k.a. the godfather of DVOA, had a very interesting stat about the Jaguars defense. Now, it was how they matched up in versus 11 personnel versus 12 personnel. Now, against 11 personnel, those teams that ran that formation tend to have a better rate of success, 6.2 yards per play. They are ranking 10.2%. Now, positive is usually a worse off side. With 12 personnel, then they've only seen it, I think it was the least amount of all offensive snaps their defense has faced, but still like a relatively significant amount. Negative 53.5% DVOA with 3.6 yards per play. Now, this is, Roy said I wanted to see a fire, and everyone's saying it works. I appreciate you guys for putting up with this. Thank you so much. The Jaguars faced a lot of the 12 personnel that they have seen this season against Atlanta. Now, I think that stat, while interesting, does need to be taken with a grain of salt, because Atlanta had a Desmond Ridder that simply couldn't read the defense, was getting completely stymied by some of their post-snap trickery and the changes in 1 high to 3 drop or 2 drop. And also, again, like that offense has so much talent, but it hasn't particularly been productive. This is a different team with 12 personnel, and this is a team that runs it a majority of the time. So I'm going to ask you, just what are your thoughts on how the Bills might fare in 11 and 12 tomorrow and what you might see more of?
Yeah, just going back to that stat too, I do think it's skewed by the fact that Desmond Ridder is horrendous. So that kind of gives me a little bit more optimism that the Bills aren't going to be like everyone, quote unquote, else has been against the Jaguars and 12 personnel. Also saying that, so 12 personnel is just the players on the field. It has nothing to do with formations, which I think a lot of people a lot of NFL fans actually tend to forget. They think 12 personnel and they think, oh, there's 2 inline tight ends. That's not the case. It could mean there's 2 inline tight ends. It could mean both are spread out wide. The Bills move Dalton Kincaid around like he's a wide receiver at times, like he's a tight end at times. So the concept of like, oh yeah, the Jaguars are great at 12 personnel. Well, the Bills can adjust and force them to change and force a nickel to cover Dalton Kincaid as opposed to one of their linebackers. So I look at it this week and I say, those numbers are concerning. They are pretty surprising and they are really interesting. But because it's this early in the season, I'm not going to bank on the concept that the Bills are going to move away from 12 personnel. I still think you're going to see the same amount, if not more, from Buffalo this week. And I think they're going to find success. We're all also waiting for that Dalton Kincaid breakout game. I don't know why it couldn't be this week. Chad Muma is starting at linebacker because Devin Lloyd's hurt right now. If the Bills can get him onto Dalton Kincaid, that's a gigantic mismatch. I think the Bills are going to look for mismatches all game, and 12 personnel is the best way to create those.
It is. And I don't think they stray away from it much either. I was surprised by that stat. But again, shout out to Greg, who I think was the one that told me most of their snaps came against Atlanta. And Atlanta going into that game was 2-1. And they had a lot of talent and some offensive success in spite of Desmond Ridder. So it's like, I do kind of understand why it would skew the metric a bit. But I do think that this is a different level of 12P because it's not like the Falcons forget except for one snap or one play, like most of the time, forget they have Kyle Pitts and forget they have Drake London. They almost pretend they don't have talent when they have so much talent, as well as an offensive line that is like built to run the ball. So it was kind of like weird to see them struggle so much. But again, I think we all know the reason why that happened. The Jaguars defense now has to face Allen, who is by far the best quarterback they faced all year. I'm sorry. They did play Mahomes, so that's wrong. Yeah, no, that's wrong. Number 2 best quarterback. However, I do think the Bills offense right now, I'm saying right now a million times because I don't want this to come off like I think this is a team that has proven they are a better offense as season stretch than Kansas City. But right now, the Bills offense is probably one of the best in the league. It's probably behind Miami right now, still by a metric standpoint, but we have seen the myriad of ways that they can beat teams. And we have seen the fact that everyone on this team at some point becomes a weapon in their offense when they need them to be, and how the attack changes and how Josh is reading the field, and kind of this idea that the way Josh is playing right now is MVP caliber football. Like he is the front runner right now. So in my eyes, while Mahomes objectively is the best quarterback in the NFL, and I will still say this, and I do think that he is going to end the season great, and there's no argument about that. I think right now Allen is playing at a level that's superior. And that's going to be a problem for the Jaguars, especially when they have to survey 12P. It still creates mismatches. You still have Dawson Knox. You still have Dalton Kincaid that can be moved around the way they form them, the way they are using them to chip edge rushers, the way they're using them to create space in the running game. It just, to me, feels like this team offensively has more ways to punch in the mouth than maybe Atlanta did, and that could be due to quarterback play. So do you agree with that? And do you have any additional thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, just kind of go back to one thing you said, like, I feel like some people, like everyone is super cautious. Like, I can't say that this offense is better than the Chiefs right now, or I can't say Josh is playing better than Mahomes because Mahomes might be the greatest quarterback of all time and the Chiefs offense is historically great, blah, blah. I agree with all that. The Bills are the better team right now. If we're just talking about right now, if we're talking about this season, the Bills have played better football than the Chiefs. Josh Allen's played better football than Mahomes. The Bills offense has been better than the Chiefs. So I look at the way that the Jaguars kind of dealt with the Chiefs, and I think they held them to 17 points. They had a really good game against Kansas City. And then I think they followed it up by giving up 37 to CJ Stroud. So I look at this Bills team and I just see a complete mismatch on the offensive side of the ball for Buffalo, where the Bills should put up north of 28 points. I see them scoring at least 4 touchdowns. That's not saying that they might not. They literally might not, but the Bills should be able to score points. And if I go to the outside, I think that's where their biggest matchups is with Stefon Diggs and Gabe Davis. The Jaguars have a really small cornerback and a really not so agile cornerback. The Bills are going to pick and choose where they can create their matchups. And if they get, say, Stefon Diggs on Tyson Campbell, that's a gigantic mismatch for Buffalo. You could see Diggs go off for another 6, 120, and 3-tutty game. Again, not saying that's a guaranteed going to happen, but the Bills have mismatches all over the field. And Diggs is probably the biggest mismatch, or one of the biggest mismatches in the NFL right now.
Yeah, Stefon Diggs, I think we're at a point where we're past the worry about a good defense bearing down on Diggs. And I'm not saying 100 yards every game, but even the Jets game, he still put up some respectable numbers and had a touchdown. There is a way for Stefon Diggs to get open in any game. And it's also because even despite the fact that they're in 12P, they really have Diggs kind of scanning the middle of the field a lot of the time too. It's not pure vertical with him. He's going all over the place. And that is another layer to kind of the bind that the Bills offense puts you in is him. Because despite the fact that you have to worry about two tight ends, despite the fact that you have to wonder if they're going to run play action or actually run up the gut, and then Josh Allen in play action is the best quarterback in the league statistically, you will also have to worry about the vertical threat of Gabe Davis, Deontay Hardy, who I call the fullback of the receiver room, because he's literally like, it's dude, the way they use him is almost like eye candy. He's like a pie in the window that like the defenders like smell and start floating towards. And then Gabe Davis leaks behind or someone leaks open for a route that like is going to be successful. Diggs is just another layer to that. And I'm going to get to this T-Dobbs comment in a second, but Diggs is another layer to that because his versatility, his ability to just be such a pristine route runner with elite hands and the ability to show that he can move after the catch and even be physical, like in the Miami game last week. You put him anywhere you want within this structure, and it just causes so many problems. So again, when it comes to how the Bills and their 12P versus the Jaguars and how they defended it well so far, I think this is just a different dimension that they might not be as solid against. And like you brought up Stroud, dude, CJ Stroud is balling out. I mean, I got to give my flowers to this guy. I said, and if you were here for this episode, when we did State of the AFC way back in like March or early April, I had said my dark horse team in the AFC South was the Houston Texans because I loved what they were building and I really like CJ Stroud. Right now, everyone in that division is 2-2. Right now, it seems like they are actually set up to make some noise against what's a weaker schedule in a conference or a division that just plays each other tough every time. I think they could actually realistically come away with the division, and it sounds insane, but they could. So sorry, I just had to give them praise. I just love talking about that team because I just love what Stroud's doing right now. T-Dobbs, your comment. I think we'll see a fair bit of 6 O-linemen and lots of 12 to chip at the Jags Josh Allen, neutralize their Josh Allen, and I think we flourish. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, interested to see where Josh Allen lines up. I've seen him line up on the left side and the right side. If he lines up over Deion Dawkins, I trust Dawkins to handle the Jaguars' Josh Allen. I know coming into the season, a lot of people were down on Deion Dawkins for whatever reason. I do not know. He's been playing like one of the better left tackles in the league at this point, and I trust him singled up with any defensive end at this point right now. If say Josh Allen's on the other side where he's lined up over Spencer Brown, you can chip him with Dawson Knox if you want, or you can bring in that 6 offensive lineman to just neutralize him. He is the player on this defense you have to neutralize. He's right. Max Crosby. It's the same thing. The Bills completely neutralize Max Crosby. If they do the same thing to Josh Allen, the Jaguars have some decent pieces in the secondary, actually, in my opinion, better than the Raiders have. But I still think the Bills can put up, points and drives and punt one time if they do every single game. So I think it comes down to the Bills are going to focus on Josh Allen, and maybe it's with a 6 offensive lineman, or maybe it's with Dawson Knox.
And the Bills offense has proven one thing too, specifically Josh Allen. Your pressure can work and he'll still make a play. Max Crosby in that Raiders game whipped Spencer Brown to Siberia, had an open lane to Josh. Josh steps up in the pocket and completes the touchdown to, I think it was to Shakir on a rope. Even if you get to Josh Allen, especially in the red zone, that doesn't mean anything until the sack is complete. So pressure just isn't enough, especially when you're talking about a team that might be bound to Josh Allen's production or maybe like one of their linebackers, but really like as a whole could potentially be neutralized by this offensive line. If Josh Allen is getting chipped, if these things are happening, then our Josh Allen might be fine with that. I mean, it's also like, how hard are the D linemen going to pursue Allen? Are they going to be guided out of the way like we did to Washington? That's the beauty of how this offensive line is playing. And I just love this comment from Sterling Archer following up that says, and I wish I could do an H. John Benjamin voice. I can't, but for the love of God and all that is holy, get Kincaid in the end zone. My fantasy team is hot garbage. Sterling Archer, they are definitely working him in. I know it hasn't been like the explosive level, but he is involved. There's also been some rookie mistakes that it's okay to talk about with Dalton Kincaid. You saw last week, Uber, like the penalty or the timeout that they had to take because he didn't know what play they were running and where to line up. Like, there are legitimate growing pains with Dalton Kincaid right now that are kind of, I don't want to say stymieing him because he's still involved, but it's kind of him limiting himself to really flourishing. And I think that will go away because he's a rookie. But I love this comment. This is so funny.
The one thing with Dalton Kincaid too, when it comes from a touchdown perspective, is I don't know how much of a red zone threat he is right now. I think he's more of a, maybe he catches the ball on the 25-yard line or something and picks up some yak for a touchdown. But when the Bills get to the 5-yard line, let's say, they're looking for Stefon Diggs. That's the guy they're looking for. They're looking for Josh to use his legs. They're looking for maybe Gabe Davis in the corner. They're going to run James Cook, Damian Harris, Latavius Murray. Like, Dalton Kincaid's so far down that list of guys they're going to use in the red zone and in the end zone, I guess, let's say.
Yeah.
But I think you could see him pick up some yak this week, and maybe he finds his way into the end zone for the first time this season.
Mm-hmm. I think so too. And again, like, it's not like Kincaid hasn't been involved in the red zone offense. He was targeted against the Raiders, but good defense took that away. He got leveled. He was supposed to be targeted last week, and there was a route for him, but Diggs kind of Josh gets flushed. Diggs reads where he's going with the ball and kind of hijacks the route. But honestly, it probably would have been a pick if he tried forcing it to Kincaid. He's involved in a lot of these red zone packages. Yeah. It's just, it's a combination of so many things to not being lucky and just like defense is playing it well. So Kincaid will have his flowers. He's going to get it going. I've seen all the signs, both film-wise and just like and watching the games, to think that there will be this like growth and metamorphosis from him. It's just not there yet. And it's also week 5. So like, it's all good. Well, we'll get there. But I want to ask you now, because we talked about Stefon Diggs. I honestly kind of spoiled this topic, but let's talk about like some of the other receivers in this deep, because we talked about how they can align Diggs and where they can move it around. But let's talk about other receivers. Like, how do you think they match up against the Jaguars secondary, and what could you see from the likes of Davis, Hardy, Sherfield, the West?
Yeah, so I alluded to one of the topics that I kind of wrote about in my matchup preview this week, and that's the Bills matchups on the outside. So you have Stefon Diggs, who I think the Bills want Tyson Campbell to cover him. Tyson Campbell isn't the most agile corner in the league. He's still a very good cornerback, but Stefon Diggs can put him in a blender in any given play. Then they want Gabe Davis on Darius Williams. Williams is a smaller corner. I think he's like 5'9", maybe he's 5'10", well under 200 pounds. Like, Gabe Davis should be able to body Darius Williams. And then you look at Andre Sisco and Rayshawn Jenkins, they're two safeties. They're good. They're ball hawks. They're going to kind of look for an errant pass or two from Josh Allen. But the Bills have all these pieces that they should just be able to kind of pick and choose their spots, and they should always have somebody open. And the way that Josh has been playing the past, 3 weeks, he's finding the first player that's open and he's saying, I'm going to give you the ball. He's not constantly looking downfield, looking for that home run. And that's kind of the evolution we're seeing from Josh Allen right now is, if you're open, I'm going to get you the ball and I'm going to trust you to go make a play. And his players are Deontay Hardy, Khalil Shakir, and Trent Sherfield. They're all these auxiliary pieces, but they've all been playing really well too. I'm actually really impressed with Khalil Shakir. Because I was kind of down on him heading into the season, had Sherfield well ahead of him. Shakir's played well when he's been in. I wish he caught that one ball against the Dolphins that he should have caught, and it should have been a touchdown. But I think the Bills can kind of, if they're in 12 personnel, you're looking at that Davis, Diggs, Shakir, or Kincaid and Knox formation, and then the Bills have all these mismatches. But at any time they can say, hey, let's get Knox a breather, let's get Kincaid a breather, and we're going to throw in a Shakir, we're going to throw in a Hardy, and it's going to cause issues just because the Bills are so deep and so dangerous in all these different ways.
Yes. There's a comment from Roy here. And he says, time to get our number 3, 4, 5 receivers a bit more involved. I think they have been plenty involved. And I think it's also a few things to this comment. And I don't disagree that I would love to see more out of them. Like, as in, maybe we need a game where we lean on Shakir, Sherfield, Hardy, whoever. But I think the way this offense is kind of producing right now, these guys are really, like you said, over auxiliary pieces. And the expectation for them also compared to what's in this offense and how it runs in structure, with Stefon Diggs eating targets, with Gabe Davis being like your punching deep threat, with the fact that they're running a lot more often too. So they're taking some of those pass attempts away, which has been kind of its lesson than previous years. To me, I feel like the way that they're being involved, is it going to show up on the stat sheet? But it's vital. Again, as I talked about Deontay Hardy before, he's a guy that, because he's on the field and because teams have to respect the speed he has on both levels, that opens things up for other receivers who might take those spots on the vacated side of the field if a team is playing zone and not man-to-man. And if they are against Deontay Hardy, who's extremely quick, then that might be silly. I think like Sherfield last week had some involvement. You saw a couple passes, specifically one screen where he got a first down that like kept the offense productive. Khalil Shakir, God, I wish he caught that ball over. Like I really wish he did, man, because that was a huge opportunity. And that throw was immaculate. It was immaculate. That's the beasthood of Josh Allen on full display. So I get where you're coming from with this, Roy. It's not me bagging on you at all because I love the input. I really appreciate it. But I do think that there's involvement beyond like, and I don't know if this is what you're inferring, but there's involvement. They're being used. Also, Trent Sherfield's run blocking. Like these are all different things that add to the receiving core and add to this offense as a whole. Chat, you've been extremely great today. Please continue. Keep it up. We're so happy to have you here. If you have joined me late, I'm so glad you did because you missed the complete S show that happened at the beginning of this episode. But I do appreciate your time. I am, for the risk of not crashing the show again, the video clip, I just want to bypass playing it. But Aaron and Greg, you guys have seen it on all Cover One shows. The link is in the description below to the Cover One Premium Pass. I implore you, please, to become a member if you haven't already. It is one of the greatest things that this network offers. It's also the backbone of everything we do when it comes to our resources for research. Guys like Uber who write incredible articles and use so much data. They are, the backbone of this network, and that all comes from people subscribing to this pass and continuing to fund us. So I implore you to please check out the link below. If you haven't already signed up, please do. The premium Slack channel is great. If you could drop a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, check out our articles that are coming out. Uber, you had a really good matchup preview. I know that you were trying to push that. I read it. It's stellar and so in-depth. This is a network that's going to provide you with some fantastic insight and information for people who are all so much smarter than myself. So please, if you could do that for us, go ahead and do it. We would really appreciate it. And if any of the Cover One heads see why I didn't play the video, I will ask them to please watch the first minute of the stream to understand why I am avoiding doing it, because I don't want absolute chaos. So do you have any final thoughts on the offense before we transition over to the defensive side of the ball, Uber?
Yeah, I mean, this is not the best defense in the NFL. It's not the worst defense. The Bills should be able to put up points. It just comes, I think every Bills fan's concern is, when is Josh going to stop being the guy that's checking down and finding the open guy? When is he going to revert to sugar high Josh? As long as he doesn't do that, if he truly realizes if he plays this way, he could be the best quarterback in the NFL, then I don't really think there's any concern. But if we see him be this little jitterbug, as Steve Mathis from the Air Raid Hour called him after he had coffee for maybe the first time in his life, now that he's in London, if we see that jitterbug, if we see that sugar high Josh, that's my biggest concern. I don't believe we see that. I think this offense puts up a lot of points.
I cannot believe, and I'm actually kind of worried about it too. That's why I say I cannot believe that. I'm worried about our quarterback's caffeine intake before a game like this. Again, why I just load this London game that they're playing. And it's a shame too, man, because like real quick, not off the record, but off topic, that stadium is gorgeous. Like it's a beautiful facility and looks so good to play in, and they've cleaned it up so well. And like, I'm excited because that's the same company that's creating the Bills' new stadium. So, I mean, shout out to Tottenham, man. As you can see by my tag below, Jotunham, that is definitely the intent of why I made it that. But real fast, I wanted to also see this comment too. I think is it Sal who put this here? Let's find it. Oh no, it was T-Dobbs. Yeah, Dorsey's had Josh throw to 9, 9, and 8 different receivers in the last 3 games. I see how he structured it. So yeah, they're spreading the ball around. And again, when you have lower pieces on the depth chart, it's going to be a situation where there's only so many targets to go around. Like, as long as you are moving the chains in some sort of way, I'm fine with your play. With Deontay Hardy, again, you saw kind of what he can be in this offense and how valuable he is when they want to kind of change things up and throw screens. Trent Sherfield, same thing. Like, this is how it's going to be. And maybe you'll have the occasional like Isaiah McKenzie game from Deontay Hardy where he has like this 100-yard performance, but like, man, I'm fine with the way it's going right now. I know he's getting paid a lot, but he's also returning punts. He's also, well, him and Harris have split it, but he's doing more. And I just feel like I'm okay if he has like a 500-yard year, if it means like the offense as a whole is productive. I've said that before with Kincaid. I'll say it with everybody, because to me, Diggs is your focal point, and that's where the targets are going to go. So
and James Cook too. I always forget about that personally. I think he's like fifth on the team in targets right now. He had that nice 41-yard pickup last week. Like James Cook is also a threat in the passing game. So you look at Knox, Kincaid, Davis, Diggs, James Cook. That's what I just named, 5 people right there. And then you have to still get Sherfield the ball and Hardy the ball and Shakir the ball. There's just so few balls to go around with the number of pieces the Bills offense has. Is kind of incredible.
Oh man, Mark C just dropped a bomb in our chat. At Jamal, James Cook is all caps awful. Cannot run between tackles, barely adequate as a blocker, 0 burst. I really miss Singletary. Devin, is that you? No, I'm just kidding.
I love Devin Singletary too. I was the biggest Devin Singletary truther last year. James Cook's better than Devin Singletary. I'm sorry. I completely disagree with that. He has been nearly a revelation. He's top 5 in scrimmage yards this year. Like I can't poo-poo on James Cook right now. He's playing very good football.
He had 77 all-purpose yards. And also one thing that I've said in spaces, I've said it to people. This is an important point too, and something I've picked up on. James Cook's chemistry with Josh Allen is developing in off-script plays. And that is a massive, and I emphasize massive component to this Bills offense. Last year, as James Cook's rookie season, where the chemistry was very clearly an issue, especially I could think back to the Detroit game where Josh almost threw a freaking pick 6 because Cook was in the wrong spot. That was an issue. This year, I ask you to please go watch that play where Allen is dropped back. He has protection. Every route is very well covered by the Miami secondary. Allen has to step up in the pocket because the pressure is beginning to kind of flood him. Cook sits back and leaks behind David Long and takes it for 55 yards because Josh reads it. That was not planned. That was James Cook read where Josh was going and put himself in the proper spot to get that ball down the field. That element, beyond the fact that last year you kind of had these off-script plays that seemed to go deep. Now the fact that they can kind of have this defense set themselves up perfectly, cover the Bills, but James Cook is reading Allen and being able to make these plays off-script with the chemistry they're building together is massive. So I'm sorry, Mark C, Devin Singletary, whoever you are. I appreciate your chat. You guys are fully welcome to disagree with us. I welcome it, but I do not agree with this. I think James Cook has been stellar this year. And I really like the chat's response to all of this. You guys are great. Please keep it up. Let's move on to defense, Uber. And we're going to talk about the Buffalo Bills pass rush. That seems to be the biggest talking point this week because obviously we know Gregory Rousseau with a foot injury is going to be out. We don't know for how long. It came out today, if you guys have not seen it, or at least yesterday or something along the lines. Shaq Lawson is dealing with a toe injury and he is questionable. Late injury. I'm not very confident. I'd like to see him play, but I don't know. So that means you're still running with Leonard Floyd, Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, the possibility of Von Miller, Kingsley Jonathan, maybe Cameron Klein. Let's talk about this Bills pass rush versus the Jags O-line. You alluded to it before, Uber. Give me your thoughts on this matchup.
Yeah, so injuries are a concern without a doubt. We're going to be out without Greg Rousseau this week, maybe for a couple of weeks. Who knows? And Groot's been very, very good this season. He's a big loss. Leonard Floyd's played extremely well, but he's dealing with an injury. AJ Epinesa has played well in spurts when he's kind of called upon. This week he might be called upon to be the second DE lined up with Leonard Floyd. I don't know if Von Miller's playing. I have no idea. I went to bed last night saying no way he plays. I woke up this morning saying he's gonna play. I'll go to bed tonight saying he won't. It's a 50-50 shot to me. I have no idea. And if he plays, the Bills should absolutely destroy this offensive line. But I think where the Bills are going to win isn't necessarily on the outside in their pass rush. It's on the inside with Ed Oliver and Daquan Jones. They've been playing probably as the best duo at DT in the entire NFL up to this point in the season. Both of them are pressuring the quarterback. Both of them are getting tackles for losses. Both of them are just dominating 3 interior offensive linemen that is forcing single teams on the outside, which is why Leonard Floyd and Greg Rousseau are one of the reasons why they've been able to excel. And a big part to this game, which hasn't been finalized yet, Cam Robinson's coming back supposedly for the Jaguars from suspension to man the left tackle position. So I do expect a little bit of rust from Cam Robinson. He's very good left tackle, but I do expect rust. My biggest concern, if I was a Jaguars fan, would be the fact that they're kicking Walker Little, who's been playing left tackle, into left guard, a position he's never played in the pros and he never played in college, and he's very, very tall. And because of his height, I look at someone like Daquan Jones or Ed Oliver that can just get that low center of gravity. you're going to see really quick if Walker Little's playing there, the Bills are going to blow him back a few times and the Jaguars are going to have to adjust. So I think that is the single biggest mismatch that the Bills will have this week. And Walker Little's been playing really, really good football at left tackle, but you don't just kick tackles into guard and say that that's going to work. It might work in Madden, but it doesn't work in the NFL.
Especially with the size difference. And yeah, that was a great point you made, especially when I read it. And I think that is going to be problematic for Jacksonville. Cam Robinson's a great player, but again, coming off the 4-week suspension, he's probably been training, probably been getting himself in shape, but first game back, you don't know how rusty he'll be. And it's quite a test with the Bills pass rush, the way it's been playing. And that hasn't just been fully edge rushers. That's been a complete game plan factor from Sean McDermott. That has been the interior defensive line being one of the best duos in the league right now, with Ed and Daquan playing out of their minds, fully healthy, knock on wood. And then talking about the linebackers, which have been an extension of the pass rush and have aided Sean McDermott in game planning how he's going to attack these O-lines with these simulated pressures, these creeper pressures, these different ways that kind of, is this linebacker going to blitz the B gap? Is this linebacker going to blitz the A gap? Is he going to drop back into coverage? Like, those factors didn't go away. And I think it's very valid to be worried about the edge rush. I'm more worried about setting the edge in the running game than I am about the edge rush getting pressure, because losing Rousseau stinks. He's one of the best in the league at doing so. Shaq Lawson's probably better part of his game right now is the fact that he's a great run defender. So now if you're losing him and you have to rely on whether you want to have maybe Floyd take that side and then take Epineza on the other side, I'm less confident in it. But again, it's how much are they really going to try and hammer the outside run? Are the linebackers going to be able to sniff it out and kind of read it behind the line of scrimmage to the point where it doesn't matter? That's where I have questions. But as far as Von Miller goes, over, he said he's what, 94% ready? Something like that.
I don't trust a thing he says. We're supposed to have OBJ on our team at this point in time, according to Von, and he's still not in Buffalo. And
yeah, no, he's not. Too. There's a great my favorite quote of all time is when Kyle was on this show, and I think we did like our best defensive players or most important defensive players, and he goes, and I quote, Von Miller just says shit. Yeah. And it's like, yeah, he kind of does, but you know what? I love the optimism. I love the all-in mentality Von has, and I appreciate that. You know, like, he could be so closed off, but he's been very open with like the media and the Bills community and the fans that I just love kind of having his presence on the team. But yeah, 94%, man. Like, I don't know. I think
94 and a half. 94.
Oh, I'm sorry. You cannot neglect the 0.5 when you're that close to 100. That could be the difference between an A- or an A and an A+. But when I think about Von and I think about the stakes of this game and the fact that, you know, the team's coming home and they're going to play a night game against the Giants that didn't get flexed out. It should have been, honestly. I think I'm just going to say he does play. And I think the reason he does is despite the fact that the team does trust their depth and despite the fact that interior's been great, linebackers have been great, you know, he's been practicing. He's had 2 successful practices. They're taking it a day at a time. He traveled with the team and post-travel said he's feeling good. Like, that was, to me, the biggest test is, does Von go with the team? Does Von have any issues with his knee post-travel? He doesn't, at least as far as we've been told. And going off the information that I have, I think Von plays. I do think Von plays, and I think he's going to be on a snap count. But I think his presence on like 3rd and long situations or passing downs is going to be enough to kind of play into the Bills' hands, where maybe he's even just like, I don't know, like they'll try to create one-on-ones for him. Maybe teams try to double team, but you really don't want to do that against what's been a great Bills pass rush. So I'm going to say he plays.
Yeah.
Great assault.
You just gave me an idea I hadn't even considered. And it reminds me of a game from years and years ago. I think it was Calvin Johnson was really, really hurt. And the Lions were like, we're just going to play him anyway. He's not even going to run routes. We're just going to put him on the field because they'll double him. And at least if they double him, then it opens everybody up. And that's what they did. I think it was Calvin Johnson. I don't think he caught a ball that game. The Bills, maybe they do the same thing with Von Miller. Like, it's 3rd and 10. They say, all right, Von, go line up against the left tackle, Cam Robinson. They'll send Cam Robinson and Walker Little to block you, and then Ed Oliver singled. And that is a win for the Bills 99 out of 100 times. So maybe that's where they're looking at with Von. But in my head, if he's playing, he's healthy enough to play. I don't know. I literally couldn't put money on it one way or another. You could give me great odds, and I still have no idea what I'd pick.
Sarah, he increased his odds to 96.5%. Is that actually true, or is she making a joke? Because I could. Is it sad that I actually have to ask that question because I don't know if like she's messing with us or if that's actually something he said? Sarah, let us know if that's a real Vaughn quote, because if it is, that's hilarious. And RJ with so for Vaughn math, you just take the polar opposite of what he says. So 94.5% really means a 5.5% chance he plays. And
good point.
that's what he texted Mike Catalano. Okay. All right. So 96.5, and it's Saturday. We got one more day. That could very much up to 98.5% Uber. That's an A plus. You know what I mean?
I want to see 100% because that means he's playing. Anything less than 100 to me, he's not playing yet.
I agree with that. So final thoughts on the pass rush before we move on to some secondary discussion.
Yeah, I mean, the Bills have essentially dominated every team they've played in the trenches on the defensive side of the ball. I alluded to this earlier, where the offensive line has played really, really good defensive lines thus far this year. I don't think that the defensive line has played a very good offensive line yet this season, and that's my biggest concern with them. Is how good are they? I think that they are really, really good and one of the elite defensive lines in football. But when they go up against a team like the Eagles down the line, will they still be able to produce pressure? If they can beat up the Eagles, then I trust them to beat up anybody. The Jaguars don't have a great offensive line. They don't have a bad offensive line. They're probably slightly above average. This might be the best offensive line we've played so far. I'd have to really think about that. But yeah, I mean, I still think the Bills get pressure even if they don't have Groot, even if they don't have Shaq, and even if they don't have Von Miller. They're just too good on the inside, and the Jaguars are providing them with a gigantic problem at left guard. If they put Walker Little there, it's a really bad decision, in my opinion.
I agree with that. And I think this could possibly be a game where McDermott decides to send more than 5. It could be. Yeah. Maybe, early on in the game, they try to kind of roll with the same game plan, and maybe the Jags are sniffing it out a little bit because they saw it against Miami. I'm not saying they're going to burn them or anything, but more like confusion. Like maybe they're a little more poised. They don't get home with that. And then McDermott's like, all right, dial up. And then just more rushers coming in. Because I think the thing too, and you made a great point about this in your article, Trevor Lawrence is kind of got the similar issue to the likes of Daniel Jones and even sometimes Josh Allen, where ball security is a problem and fumbling is an issue. And if they do see that as a point of attack, and the Jaguars are really trying to kind of take advantage of the loss of Tre White and maybe trying to let these routes develop with Ridley and Kirk down the field, I feel like sending that pressure and muddying his vision as well as like trying to punch the ball, there's a realistic chance that the D-line, despite the injuries, could actually come up with some fumbles. And they've been doing it every week. Like every single week, they've been making these types of plays. So I think the pass rush will be fine. Honestly, injuries stink. I want Rousseau to get better. I think they'll be okay, even with the factors they're facing. But let's move on now to the secondary. And obviously, I've said so many times, like Tre will be missed. We love you, Tre White. You are one of the heartbeats of the Buffalo Bills since you came into the league. And if you somehow see this message, all we wish you is for a speedy recovery and for you to just, come back even stronger. You are so well loved by this fan base, and it's a terrible loss.
Oh yeah.
With the, situation the Bills are in right now, you are now probably going to see Mr. Kaiir Elam get a shot. Talk to me about your thoughts on this Bills secondary in this matchup, and even Kaiir Elam to boot.
So this maybe this is a hot take for some fans. So if Kaiir Elam is not active tomorrow morning, I don't know. Then he's done. There's no reason of having him on the roster. He will be active. That being said, the Bills essentially need him to be active. I still think, assuming Benford is healthy, which is a whole nother question too. Right. If Benford's healthy, I think it's Benford and Dane Jackson. Dane Jackson came in against the Jaguars, played really well. Against the Dolphins, played really well, and he was good last year. He was not awful. He was not great. He was good last year. I trust Dane Jackson. I don't trust Kaiir Elam yet. Elam might get a shot tomorrow. If Christian Benford's hurt, then it's going to be Elam and it's going to be Dane Jackson. And Elam better play well, because if he doesn't, he might be shown the door on the way back to the United States. So when it comes to Elam, I really just don't even know what to think about him. He's super physical, he's very athletic, but it doesn't work in this defense that the Bills play, which is zone heavy, intellectual. Like, you need to know your spot, you need to know your drops, you need to communicate well. And very clearly, Sean McDermott doesn't see that from Elam yet. if he does get the job tomorrow, I guarantee you that the Jaguars will be targeting him, whether it be through Calvin Ridley or Zay Jones or Christian Kirk. They're going to go right at Kaiir Elam, try to force penalties, try to force mistakes, try to get over the top on him. And the Bills might have to send him help with a Micah Hyde or a Jordan Poyer. So I am concerned if it's Elam. I'm not concerned if it's Dane Jackson. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be something that's going to be talked about over the next few weeks here, especially if Benford's health is in question.
I think that, yeah, if Elam, I fully expect him to be active, but yeah, if Elam either is inactive again, or if there is just, he's getting snaps. Like, I don't know if Jamarcus Ingram, if there's been any news on him, if he's coming up, what their plan is with him, if he's healthy enough to promote and actually have him be on this active roster. But I have this nightmare scenario for Elam where he does get the nod and Ingram's also active and Ingram outplays him. And Ingram had limited reps last year where he actually wasn't bad. I mean, the first Miami game where they had to call upon him, I'm pretty sure he made a play. I worry about that, but I think this is his opportunity. I think Kaiir Elam, look, whatever, I've been told by everybody, it's time to kind of move past the fact that he was a first round pick and understand that this is what he is right now. Can he get better? Yes. He hasn't yet. He's been beat out by Dane and Christian Benford, but he's going to likely be active. This is the chance for him. I think having safety help with the likes of Poyer, now who's now going to be playing, which is probably a bigger component of the game with Kaiir Elam's matchup than talked about, just because now he's got that help. I think that they know Elam's game day inexperience is a factor. They know that they've been holding him back because of issues probably in practice and understanding the playbook and the DPIs that we've seen, which, by the way, I think it was RJ who said it, or someone in the chat said it. Oh, no, it was Roy. What's your over under for DPI on Elam if he plays? One of you said Land Clark isn't calling the game, so maybe he'll get away with more. But I agree with that. I think knowing that Tre White's down and Tre White was seldom targeted and Tre White was having a fantastic year before the injury, it's a drop off. And Kaiir Elam being in there, having to hold it down, and also kind of the mixture of, if you are concerned about the Buffalo Bills pass rush not being as effective because of the injuries or limited Von Miller snaps, it could be a problem. But I want to just hold out the hope that we have seen Kaiir Elam play regular season action and in the playoffs. We have seen positive plays from him. And I think that, he knows what this opportunity is going to be. He knows that given the circumstances around him on this team right now, it's definitely one that he cannot take lightly. And I know Elam probably isn't taking it lightly. I think he's working very hard to get to where he wants to be. But this is definitely an opportunity for Kaiir Elam to show that he's worth keeping active. And, the Bills don't have to dip into the trade market or give up any assets. But I do worry about it, Uber. I do worry about it just because, again, the inexperience for this season, how the defense has been kind of playing with really ample communication on both levels. The fact that Tre has just such an established role on this team. And now not even just him, but with Benford potentially not playing, it could be a really tough day for Bills cornerbacks. Now, does that mean automatically that the Jags are scoring 35 points? Not particularly. You just might see some more explosive plays, but I do think that this is a big test for Elam, and I'm very curious to see how it pans out.
Yeah, and the good news for Elam is he has some of the best help over the top maybe in the entire NFL with Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. So that kind of takes a little bit of the pressure off him where he can go and make a play and he can be a little aggressive if he does get his shot this week. And I also think it helps that they're playing the Jaguars. It blows my mind. This is, again, maybe another hot take. It blows my mind that people still think that Trevor Lawrence is an elite quarterback. He's good. He's good. That's about where he is right now. The fact that he has this offense with all these weapons and he's been average at best, he might be the, Colts, Titans, Texans, and he's probably a third best quarterback in his division right now behind Anthony Richardson and CJ Stroud. So I look at this Jaguars offense and I'm like, you got Calvin Ridley, you got Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, Travis Etienne, and Evan Ingram. You better be able to put up points. And if they can't put up points on this Bills defense, I think that you might have to start questioning Trevor Lawrence. That doesn't mean they won't extend him. That doesn't mean he won't be in Jacksonville in the future. But I am a Trevor Lawrence disbeliever. I really never believed in him coming into the NFL. And I think this week, let me see Kaiir Elam pick off Trevor Lawrence once or twice this game. That'd make me pretty happy.
Oh, I'd love that. And here's my thing. If Kaiir Elam ends up coming in for Tre White and plays exceptionally well, or at least just good cornerback play, like to the lengths of how Benford played last year before injury, no one's allowed to criticize Brandon Beane or Sean McDermott for a full year. Like no one.
Yeah.
No, that's a joke. That's a joke. Maybe you could criticize McDermott because coaching reasons, but if you want to talk about Brandon Beane's drafting and Kaiir Elam actually steps up and plays well, and down the stretch, just like Bernard has stepped up and played incredibly well, beyond good, like exceptionally well. That would be an unbelievable flex for Brandon Beane. And it kind of shows you that sometimes these guys just need to marinate a little bit, right? Like some guys aren't as pro ready as others. It doesn't mean that they won't ever be. It just means maybe it's a new transition for them stylistically, aesthetically, like as far as how they're going to be playing in this defense. And then also just talking about assignments, the reliance on communication, the reliance on, your veteran safeties and how you play alongside them and knowing who's going to help you or not. That all matters. And it could just be what's holding Elam back right now. But, I've been very optimistic about it, saying that it is okay to be disappointed with where he's at currently. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that he's never going to be there. I mean, this is his chance. So this is, in my opinion, the final chance to see what we got in him. And if he's struggling over an extended period of time, that really is going to be problematic. But Uber, we are reaching the end of the episode. We're on the home stretch here. I just want to ask you, because of today's episode title and kind of where we're going with this, how, in your final thoughts, how the Bills beat the Jaguars tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, how do the Bills beat the Jaguars tomorrow? The offense just keeps doing what it's doing. The way they're playing right now, I don't think there's a defense in the NFL that can slow them down, whether that's the Cowboys or the 49ers or the Eagles. Like, I really don't think there's a defense that can. I just think the Bills are too good, too talented, and too well coached at this point in time for opposing teams to slow them down, as long as they keep playing the same way. Josh, keep playing the same way. On the other side of the ball, I think it comes down to pressure. Make Trevor Lawrence uncomfortable. Get after him. And whether that be sending Terrell Bernard or Matt Milano on blitzes, that's fine. Just get to him and reduce the explosive plays. I talked about Micah Hyde. I talked about Jordan Poyer. They're the help deep, and they're going to be big this week, especially when you have Calvin Ridley streaking down the sideline trying to make a catch. So I think overall, you're looking at the offense play the same way and just get pressure on Trevor Lawrence. If you put pressure on him, he shrinks up into a little like pumpkin or whatever it is, and I don't think he's very good. So yeah, I think the Bills are going to pretty handedly win this game. I think 2-score win for sure.
Yeah, October episode, he shrinks into a pumpkin. I do want to say though, this comment from D Danny, which says, should respect T Lawrence, consider the many drops. That is something that I do think reigns true. His offense hasn't. His receivers have kind of had these drop issues. That's kind of range from last year too. Like that game against the Chiefs, I'm pretty sure they dropped like 4 catchable passes that would have changed all of Trevor Lawrence's metrics from like 22nd to 14th. Like that does have to be noted. But I do agree with some of the issues that surround him right now are beyond just the receiving core. Because again, Lawrence is not good under pressure. Like a lot of the time, he has these fumble problems. Like he might be quick to throw a bad interception. Like it feels like Lawrence is this type of player that I feel like I was expecting to take this year 3 leap. We're early in the year. I think he still could, but I think it's taking a bit of time for him to get that going. Again, I think you said it in your article, Uber. He hasn't had a single 300-yard game yet, passing wise. So he's kind of just like in this, it seems like feel it out territory, which I had more understanding for going from Peterson or Urban Meyer to Doug Peterson year 1. It's also another thing to say that this is year 2 of Doug Peterson for Trevor Lawrence. I kind of view this as year 2 of Trevor Lawrence at the same time. I know that sounds a little silly, but think about like how awful, and we lost to them, which is even more infuriating. It like side note, when people talk about how awful Urban Meyer is, the same way people are like, wow, Zach Wilson's so bad. I can't say a word. We lost to both of them, so I'll never say anything. Like it's just that's the universe's cruel punch in the gut. But like Urban Meyer's regime was terrible. It was bad. And it felt like they were lost identity-wise. Like, remember, they beat the Bills with 9 points, right? Like, Lawrence missed a wide-open touchdown throw in that game. He had a horrible rookie year by, like, the metrics of what you expected him to be. And you look at some of the contemporaries in the AFC South right now that are rookies and playing incredibly well. Now, like, year 1 of Peterson, he's starting to figure his stuff out, looks a little bit more poised. Year 2, it's kind of more of the same, feeling it out. So I do understand to some degree if there are still growing pains for Trevor Lawrence. I know it's a third-year league, but like it's kind of understandable when that transition with Peterson comes up that it might take him a little longer to marinate. So I'll defend him. I'll defend him a little bit because some people I've heard really bag on him. Not that you have been bagging on him. I think your critiques have been.
I'm one of those people. I don't think he's good. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Like
you can disagree with it.
Yeah. Like it shrinks into a pumpkin. Still a great term. People bag on him. I get it. And there's reason to do it. But also, like, I just look at Lawrence's development curve. I look at the fact that he has a good offensive coach. And I'm reserving my judgment for like the back end of this year and next year, because I've seen flashes from Trevor Lawrence where he throws some dots, can hit some really impressive windows where I'm like, it's there. It's just not like consistent yet, and it could get there. So I'll give any Jags fan that sees this, I'll give you some flowers there. But where I think the Bills can beat the Jaguars, how they can do it, again, I think it's a trench game. I think the Bills pass rush stymieing Trevor Lawrence is the answer. I do think valid question marks exist on the Bills secondary right now, and we'll have to see how that plays out. But assuming that even with the injuries the Bills have sustained going into this game, that their pass rush, that the edge pressure is still okay, that their interior pressure is still dominating like it's been, that the linebackers are getting involved in this pass rush and also playing opportunistic ball. Mark C., I saw your comment. I didn't mention Matt Milano only because Matt Milano is a given at this point. Like we could praise him every single week on the show. He's stellar. He's an all-pro. I love Matt Milano. The absence of Matt Milano discussion in this episode is not because of anything more than I'm used to it. He's so good. We love him. But those guys like Milano and Bernard being extensions of pass rush, providing that extra level to that, I think is the difference in what stymies Trevor Lawrence from really seeing the field successfully, stopping the Jaguars from getting these deeper routes developed with Christian Kirk, with Calvin Ridley. I think where the Jaguars have to try and beat the Bills is over the middle with some of their slot guys and like the reliance on Evan Ingram, Zay Jones, and some of those outside runs with Travis Etienne. But I do think that the Bills pass rush has been good. And I think that goes beyond just personnel, but also coaching and how he's been constructing it. And I think, like you alluded to, Uber, with some of the offensive line issues that they might have, Rusty Cam Robinson, I'm blanking, but the movement of their tackle to guard and how thank you. Movement attack. I love that last name for a big dude, by the way. Moving him to the inside and what that could cause. I think that is the reason why the Bills will win. That's how they can beat the Jaguars. And I think if I had to give you a scoring prediction, I don't think it slows down to where the Bills score like under 20. I could see this being like a 28-20 game, something along those lines. I think maybe the jet lag might cause some execution errors offensively, and the Jaguars rushing defense might have a good game if their DT plays. If he's in, I could see it being something where they kind of call upon a lot more 11 or maybe just some creative looks out of 12 and try to air it out a bit, and they could still probably pull away at the end. But I think like something akin to like 28-17, 28-20 is something I could see for this game. So, any final thoughts before we sign off? I'm sorry.
No. I think everything you said is fair. So I'm a gambling man. I'm going to be betting the under on the first half just because I think that the travel issues are real. But at the end of the day, the Bills are the significantly better team, and this is a game that they should win, and hopefully they will win heading into a big game against the Giants next weekend.
I fully agree. You got to get your wins. You got to stack AFC wins. This is going to be a tight division race. This is going to be, Miami's not going anywhere. We beat them, and that's great that we did, but that team's not going to fall off the face of the earth tomorrow with how they're structured. They will bounce back. They are going to be a tough team in this division, which means you have to get every win you could ever get against any AFC team for the rest of the year. Just some final comments before we sign off. Still holding grudges against the Jags. I want revenge on Josh Allen. Yes, I completely agree with you. I want revenge too. That 9-6 game was the worst regular season game I think I've watched in this era. And and I'm including 2018, because 2018 Bills were bad, but at least we knew that. This was a team that was kind of rolling going into this game. They also had just beaten the Chiefs. They beaten good teams, and they just laid an egg in Jacksonville. So I am fully on the board of I want my revenge. I want this game to just be an absolute throttling for the Bills. Charles G, 27-20. I respect it. I have a similar vibe. Roy's a little more optimistic with 34-16. Could be. Again, I feel like I've doubted parts of the Bills defense before, and they've always shut me up. So we'll see, man. But yeah, that was today's episode. Everybody, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Under Review. For all of you that joined us in the chat, for all of you listening after the fact, I want to first and foremost say Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Cover One appreciates you. Your input is valid, whether we agree with it or disagree with it. We are always happy to have you here. And for Mr. Uber Hansen, thank you so much for joining me today. You are always a great guest. And if you guys can please check out his show Roundup, as well as read some of his articles that come out on Twitter, or actually all of his articles, that would be greatly appreciated. Please plug anything you have that you want to plug now. Let the people hear it.
Yeah, just tomorrow morning before the game, I'll be redropping my rooting interest post, kind of with a detailed explanation of who you should root for in every single game to benefit the Buffalo Bills. So try to get that tomorrow morning before the game. It's going to be bright and early, though. So that's all I got really right now.
Yes, sir. Yes, I hope you have a great time, man. Well deserved. And honestly, like, I'm so excited for the Bills fans that are either there in London right now or just celebrating back here in New York. It's going to be a fun time. Like, listen, I don't like the London game, but at the very least, 9:30 a.m., the game starts early. We don't have any anticipation. It's set your alarm, get up, go watch, and like whatever happens, happens. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. And for all of you listening, my name is Joe DeRosa. You can find me on Twitter at @show_DeRosa. I really do apologize to everyone who was seeing this later on or listening or anything for those technical issues in the beginning. That seems to be a issue with screen sharing that I'm going to have to figure out. I am hardwired to the router in our apartment right now. So like those issues should not happen. So still, if you were there for that and if you see that, I do apologize again, but thank you for putting up with those technical difficulties. You guys were amazing. Enjoy the game tomorrow. If you're getting up for an early pint, I hope it's cold and refreshing and it brings the Bills some good luck and a good victory tomorrow. But for Uber Hansen, I am Joe DeRosa. Thank you all so much. We will see you next week, and go Bills. Cheerio.